Geico presents Our Town, Season 4, a 30-minute podcast produced by Best Bark Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks. Geico, 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance. Now, here's your host, Andy Ockershausen.
I'm Andy Ockershausen. This is Our Town, and I'm getting a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to talk to an old friend. He's really not old, but he's been around longer than, almost as long as I have, Dave, which is pretty spectacular. Dave McConnell, the star of WTOP, the number one reporter on the Hill. You've been there longer than anybody.
I probably have by now on the radio television side. I think there are a couple of print guys that have longer times in than me. Yeah.
But you have ingrained yourself so much into that Hill, and I have been a fan of yours since you. Thank God you got that good WML training before you went on the street and work with a lot of professionals.
Yep.
And all these years you work with a lot of pros.
Yep.
It helps you, David.
It does.
Keeps you on your toes.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you remember our friend Joe McCaffrey.
I do indeed.
And he got into the newspaper business, and we lost track of him. I don't know if he died or what, but he was down in Virginia somewhere.
When I first came to the Hill, I used to see Joe. Yeah, he was still there.
Yeah, well, I think he got out of the Army here and didn't leave. WTOP, one of my favorite sounds. I remember it was WJSV. That I remember the lineup was Eddie Gallagher.
Yep.
Who was followed? The morning man was, oh God. Well, Eddie did that Moonlight show. What was it called? Dreams or something?
Well, there was
Mark Evans.
Yeah, that's right, Mark Evans. Housewives Protective League.
HPL,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was a CBS guy, and I was at his funeral. I had a chance to talk about him a little bit. Jim Gibbons, who had been working for us, along with WTOP, was such a powerhouse with that 1500 signal, and
right.
Nobody could compete with that. Then FM came along.
Yep.
When FM was made by WTOP FM by switching that FM station. They bought the station, right?
Yes.
WGMS.
Our original FM station, we gave away to Howard University.
And Mrs. Graham.
Catherine Graham, Larry Israel was running the station then. I
was talking about Larry, by paying him a compliment, because I got to know Larry quite well, because it was a small town then, Dave. It ain't that way anymore.
No.
You knew everybody knew you. Management, talent, whatever. We were all together. You know, the hangouts were the same. The Dancing Crab or Duke's Restaurant or wherever it was. It doesn't exist anymore, the camaraderie. But Larry Israel called me one day and said that they were broadcasting Maryland football. And he said, this is like 1968 to 70. He said, we're going all news. And the game, I'm not going to be able to do that anymore, play-by-play, because you can't do both. You can't be all news and do play-by-play. It was his theory. Mm-hmm. And I supported that because he's right. You can't have a baseball game on and say you're doing all news.
Right.
And he couldn't have a football game. So he tipped us, and we called over there and made a deal take the games off of WTOP. And that's when people were close. And I don't think that exists in radio anymore. A lot of competitiveness, but work together.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think that might be true. I'm not so sure. I don't feel.
You may not have felt it that much on the Hill, but you had people in your world, in your news world, there were some very exceptional reporters that covered the Hill for the other stations, but particularly for TV and the guys from WRC. Some of them became Arthur Godfrey, people like that.
Yeah, yeah.
WTOP is Arthur Godfrey for a while.
That's right.
But David, you have done so good. Have you ever had a chance to think back and think how many reports you've done in your 55 years?
No, I haven't. I just keep doing one after another. I don't really think back that much. Although I agree with you, I've been through some wild and crazy times on the Hill. That's certainly true.
Haven't you? You've covered the best and the worst. But you weren't there. You were too young to remember the shooting when in the House of Representatives, the guys had pistols.
I remember listening to the radio reports about it then. Yeah, 1954. I do remember that very much. The bullets are still in the wall down there in the House chamber, by the way. Huh? No, they never took them out.
Was that the same group that was trying to get into the Blair House, or was it a different group?
Yes, they were
Puerto Rican nationalists.
Puerto Rican nationalists.
Now they got their independence and they want money. They don't go together.
No, not
So
really.
All the people you've known, I mean, the characters on the Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Is any of them special that come to mind, like Tip O'Neill?
Tip O'Neill was one of the all-time great characters.
Yeah. Remember the little crippled guy who worked for him? I can't think of his name.
Chris Matthews. One of the, I don't know. Chris Matthews is the person that I know that was Tip's.
Chris,
was Tip's major
Married
domo.
to my girl. Yeah, erstwhile Kathy Cunningham.
Oh, yeah, okay. Matthews, yeah.
Yeah.
Tip was larger than life. He was very good to me with interviews and talking to me, and he actually listened to me on the air. At least he said he did. He called
I believe him.
The man with a beautiful voice. I mean,
Oh, yeah, he was.
I wouldn't
He was
think.
typical New England politician.
He was a
too,
great,
wasn't
all politics is local, and Tip O'Neill knew how to control politics, both local and national. It would be interesting to see what kind of a challenge it would be for him to be on the Hill today, the way he did politics. But he kept the party together during some tough times, and like everybody else, he decided one day to retire. Became a little bit ill. He was a little sick.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, that issue there.
And Lyndon was president when you went up on the Hill then? You didn't know him as a senator, did you?
I did not. I did not cover the Hill in those days. Let me see. I went to the Hill. The first time I went to the Hill was 1981. So that would have been when the Republicans took over the White House.
That was Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, when Reagan took over the White House.
That's when he and...
and by the way, the Republicans took over the Senate for the first time in eons.
In 81?
Yeah.
And that's when he and Tip got close together, Reagan and
Yes.
Tip, right?
Yes.
A couple of Irish Poles, huh?
That's exactly right.
How about this new group? Do you have any favorites? You can't be favorites.
I can't pick favorites, but, I think they all have something. I came to get this question a lot. I've gotten a lot over the years. You obviously want to say Ted Kennedy stood out among people. There were other people who stood out, who came and went, and there's no doubt about that. But my view is they're all interesting in their own way, and you try to cover as many of them as you can. They have different strengths, different weaknesses. They're big on different issues. You obviously follow Senator McConnell, Mitch McConnell, the majority leader. We have a little joke. He calls me Cousin Dave. I call him Cousin Mitch because we have the same last name. But he has a very dry sense of humor. He seems very formal in his presentation, but he's a different person when you talk to him one-on-one.
You can get along with him.
Yeah,
But
he's somebody that stands out, as did Senator Mitchell when he was the majority leader. Who would have us into every day.
What happened to him? He went to baseball and did something. He
retired.
Major League.
He retired. He felt he'd had enough of a career, and he went on to do the baseball job, Commissioner of Baseball.
Right.
And then he's called in from time to time. He did the Good Friday brokering when the Irish, the North and South Ireland people finally got together. He was very shrewd, very good at that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a great leader on the Hill. And how about on the House side? You had of course, Tip, but others that are up there now on the House side. Ryan, he's another Irishman from.
That's right, from
Killarney.
Appleton, Wisconsin. Yeah. Now, yeah. Yeah, he's very pleasant. He knew who I was without me having to introduce myself. He's very sharp on knowing the reporters. He is very earnest, whether you agree or disagree with him politically. He comes across as a nice, effervescent kind of a guy, shall I say? And he's managed to keep the party together, but now it's getting a little tough for him, and he's decided
it is what it is with him.
Yeah,
though, right?
And he's trying to thread the needle with President Trump, who he really doesn't agree with on a lot of issues, and probably is appalled by his behavior, but he won't say it in public.
No, he's a party guy. He's got to be as a leader, a majority leader. The Speaker of the House. What am I saying, majority leader? But when Lyndon Johnson was on the Hill, he had the same control of the Senate as Tip had of the House. I mean, Lyndon controlled the Senate. Then he and what was it, Sam Rayburn?
Sam Rayburn was the old Speaker of the House.
He was an old politician.
Yeah,
they knew how to make deals too. I don't know if the new group does. But this is Andy Arker's and this is Our Town. And I'm talking with Dave McConnell, the dean of the Capitol Hill Reporter.
The natural habitat of a creepy doll is a horror movie. It can't help being creepy. It's that small, fixed smile and those never-closing eyes, always watching you, plotting, which you're imagining. It's mindless. But when the creepy doll hears that Geico not only saves people money, but also gives them easy access to emergency roadside service through an award-winning app, it knows you should switch. Because yes, switching to Geico is a no-brainer. The only question is, how did the creepy doll move from the bedroom to the hallway? I would get out of the house.
This is Sonny Jurgensen. Got a confession to make. I let my wife drag me to one of those Mike Collins estate planning seminars. Like I don't have enough on my plate with a certain football team. Actually, it wasn't too bad. In fact, we both learned a whole lot about how to protect our kids and grandkids down the road and to take care of ourselves right now. So if you get one of Mike's invitations in the mail, go. I'm glad I did. Get all the information and register online at MikeCollins.com. That's MikeCollins.com.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
This is Our Town with Andy Ockershausen, and having a wonderful conversation with Dave McConnell, who knows a lot of secrets he can't tell us because he wants to keep his job. But if I had a session with doing editorials on the old broadcast days on WMAL, and we're criticizing the members of the House and Senate getting that free parking at National Airport right next to the gate almost. Mm-hmm. They had their own little lot there. And I felt that was unfair to the public, that they should be parking where everybody else parks, or get somebody to drop them off. But what they did was we had Joe McCaffrey, they took his parking place away.
They did?
Yeah.
It's amazing. I didn't know. I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. They were punishment. Somebody, I forget who it was. I think the guy from Texas
Jim.
Right.
Jim Wright. Yeah.
That's when Jim
I
Wright
knew Jim,
went.
yeah.
But McCaffrey, he got it back, and we got it back, and we had a good relationship with Tip. But I used to go nuts about their parking. I grew up in Northeast Washington. I know how beautiful those parks. But now they've concreted over most of the parks that I knew as a young grown-up, and they're parking. And
Lots.
The story I heard, Dave, now this may not be true, but he told me, Joe McCaffrey, when he got out of the Army, went to work on the Hill, said there were 4,800 employees of the House and Senate working on Capitol Hill. 4,800. When he retired, there were over 40,000.
Sure. I don't doubt that. The entire government has ballooned since World War II. Sure.
Not just the House and Senate.
So has the Hill, yeah. And yet there's always somebody on the Hill that wants to cut government jobs. And we saw a recent statistic. They're still at about the same figure that they've been for many, many years.
40 or 50 years, I'm sure.
At least.
Well, nobody wants to lose their job, and they don't want to lose their patronage either, right?
No.
Do they still have elevators on the Hill?
Oh, yeah. Not elevator operators.
Oh, there are no operators,
sometimes during votes. Yeah, that's when the members control all the elevators, and we peons, we reporters, we have to take the stairs. Yeah. No, there used to be one elevator for reporters and general public, but the current Republican gathering, shall we say, has decided that they're going to take over that elevator when they need it. Not all the time, but when they need it. So that's gone too.
They make the report.
Make us walk.
Make the reporters walk.
Yeah.
But the elevators were jobs, and that was patronage.
That's
right. And
right.
I know a lot of people that got into politics and got into business by one of those elevators. They had funny little, they had the cage like and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I used to go up to the Hill at the meeting. And I was talking the other day to a man about my relationship with a broadcaster from Burlington, Vermont. We were having a problem getting appropriation for, not for a visitor's center, it was something big downtown. It was controlled by the head of the D.C. committee. The chairman was Daniel Leahy. Not Daniel.
Patrick Leahy.
Patrick Leahy.
From Vermont. Yeah, senator from Vermont.
From Burlington. And the guy that ran the station in Burlington, a friend of mine, was his campaign man. No, his treasurer. I did not know that. So I called him. I said, would you mind talking to Patrick and tell him we need the money? Not we need it. It's for the city. It's something like a visitor center or something. And they were sitting on the appropriation. And then we went back up to a meeting, and he said, oh, Andy, I am so glad. I became his best friend. Said, I didn't know you knew Frank Balch. Whatever Frank wants, we try to cooperate with. That's what makes this system work. And we got our appropriation. Leahy never forgot it. Whenever we speak, he says, how are things in Vermont? Burlington. I said, you're from Burlington, you ought to know. But this establishing relationships was important
for
local people.
Sure, absolutely.
those D.C. committees and the House committees for District of Columbia were very strong.
They were, and those were the first assignments that I had. And when I came there from
Blatnick,
WTOP.
remember that name?
I do. Congressman Blatnick from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
His son is still working on the Hill in some capacity. He had a son, and he worked in his office. And then when Blatnick got a heart attack and died, they kept him on.
Is that right? Oh, my. But that name was very familiar with the House District Committee or the Senate District Committee. And I was trying to think of a guy that was, I played tennis with him at Army Navy. I used to call him Mr. President. He kept saying he's from a senator from Connecticut. He was going to run for president.
Ribicoff?
No, right before Abe. After Abe. A young guy, but he didn't get to be president. I want to tell you that, but we had fun with it. But the people on the Hill were part of the community. They lived here, you know. We knew them.
Yes.
Like Richard Nixon used to live in Park Fairfax. Before I moved in, I found that out. Various people lived in the apartments up close to the Hill. And it was a small town, still is in a lot of ways, but it's so hard to keep up now, Dave.
It is, and you raise an interesting point about where. And when I started on the Hill, there were still a lot of people who did live on the Hill. And what happened is that the pressures of the campaign and flights, air flights, quick flights, back and forth. I mean, in the old days, Danny Rostenkowski and his group of guys from Chicago, they would get in a car and bundle up to Chicago on Thursday evening, come back Monday morning, but they spend the weekend in Chicago. Now, with a flight, I know a congressman from Texas. He catches his flight Monday morning, and he's here for the vote that evening, or he'll catch Tuesday morning if there are votes that night. And they usually don't schedule votes much beyond Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So Thursday afternoon in the House, they're out. They're catching their planes back home. You don't have people buying homes. It's very expensive. The real estate's gotten a lot more expensive.
Oh, it does.
It's very hard to have a home in Washington. And so they've decided not to break up their families. And beyond that, a number of congressmen on the Republican side don't even rent an apartment here. They use their offices for their living space. And they go to the gym to wash up, shower and exercise. So they never leave their office. And they hardly ever get into the town. And you don't have that interaction between at least some members of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I've heard about them sleeping on the couches or whatever, or they bring in cots and so forth. But you're right about the real estate. Capitol Hill real estate has exploded, of course.
Yes.
I grew up close to the Lincoln Park area. I never considered that Capitol Hill. I said, Capitol Hill's up by the Capitol. Yeah. Now, Lincoln Park, the houses are millions of dollars. It's just a dumpy little park. But that's the way it is in D.C. now.
It is. It's changed everything.
Now, did you grow up in the city, Dave?
I grew up in the city somewhat. My parents moved back in at some point. But I grew up in what was then Branchville, Maryland. It's now College Park. It's all been incorporated.
The streetcar used to go to Branchville.
That was the end of the streetcar. That's right. You went from Branchville into Washington to Eckington. Then they take this is old. This is really old time. But they take the old Toonerville trolleys out there, and you get onto a more modern one, and it's where they had the connection below the street to make the car run instead of a little thing that hit the rails.
No, I know, the plows.
Yeah, but anyway, that's where I grew up. And
so
then
you've been part of our town for a long time, obviously. And then you went to school out there at DeMatha.
Went to DeMatha High School.
You went to grade school and so forth in Northwest.
Holy Redeemer.
Was very small then, wasn't it?
It was. We only had 200 or 300 students, and it was new.
Right.
I was all set to go to St. John's Military Academy, where many Catholic boys went either to St. John's or Gonzaga.
Right. Correct.
And I didn't think the Jesuits were for me because they were too strict, and maybe maybe I wasn't smart enough for Gonzaga, frankly. But St. John's was a pretty smart school. I loved the uniform, and I thought maybe maybe I'd go on to West Point. Then I heard about this school in Hyattsville run by the Trinitarians called DeMatha, and they were going to have a swimming pool in the building.
On campus, huh?
That did it. I told my parents, look, cancel the application to St. John's. I'm going to DeMatha, and I did. We never got a swimming pool, but as far as I'm concerned, I got the best education I ever had.
Wonderful times. Was Morgan Wooten there then when you were?
He was just about there, not quite there.
He was a teacher, too.
That's right.
Not only a coach, but a teacher. Which is what he did with basketball.
Yeah.
He taught those kids how to play.
Yeah.
And then he brought that to the classroom. Now DeMatha has sort of exploded. Mm-hmm. We have friends that built this is off at a hamburger place called Elevation Hamburgers in Hyattsville.
Really?
And you can see DeMatha has turned into a very profitable business.
They've taken over that whole block. Yeah.
Absolutely. DeMatha, the school is so great now. And they recruit, of course, and they do it, and they have great kids, but they have great educators.
They do. They do.
Which is what a lot of kids go to prep for,
Mm-hmm.
and in Gonzaga. You know, I know a lot of kids that went to, when I grew up, they went to Gonzaga. I went to Eastern, but Larry Hogan,
Yeah,
the congressman, he went to Gonzaga, he and his brothers.
that's correct.
And they were good kids, but I don't know where the son went. I'm not sure he went to, but he's had a spectacular career. He had ever ran for anything, and all of a sudden he's governor.
Mm-hmm.
That only could happen in Maryland, I think.
Well, it's in politics if you're in the right. This sounds so hackneyed, but it's true. If you're in the right place at the right time, that's all that matters.
Timing.
And from what my friends who cover Maryland politics tell me, that's what happened with Larry Hogan. There was something, the voters were looking for something. They were discontented with what they perceived, and I'm not going to say whether they were right or wrong. They perceived as something that wasn't clicking. It wasn't working. The governor wasn't, the particular, the party that was running the state, at least the governorship, the Democratic people there, they weren't connecting to a certain segment of the people. And so enough of those people voiced their concerns at the polls, and that's how Larry got in.
Well, he was like every man, too, you know. I mean, he was a blue-collar guy without being a blue-collar guy, but that's the way his perception was.
Well, his father was the one Republican who could get elected in Prince George's County as county exective.
Isn't that incredible?
He was the three-term congressman before that. And now the Watergate years, all of the Republicans, a lot of them got kicked out, and he did.
Changed everything.
Well, actually, he was running for governor, and I think he either had to give up his seat, or when he tried to keep it, it didn't work. But he had 3 good terms.
And they threw out the guy. Who was the guy in Maryland that had the 2 names, 3 names thing? Senator. I think he was from Frederick, but he represented Montgomery County. I think he got bumped off at that Nixon massacre. What, he had 2 names or something. Janet, you got to help me. He was talking to Janet. She's in charge.
Well,
I understand.
Montgomery County and Frederick, that area was represented for years by Congressman Mac Mathias.
Yeah.
And then Charles Mac Mathias. That's
Yeah.
right. Well, McCurdy is his mother's name. And they were from Frederick, and then he moved into Montgomery County. He took it over from a Democrat back in 1980, and he held the seat for about 8 years, and then he ran for the Senate, defeated Senator Brewster, and he held his seat for 3 terms.
And then he just quit.
He just decided it was time to retire, and he did.
There's so many characters that you've had to deal with I remember the guy in Virginia, Bill Scott. Remember the senator from Virginia?
I do, yeah.
Took the Senate. No, he did. He did it in a press conference. Neil Augustine, you ought to hear this. The United States Senator stood up and said, "These stories about me being the dumbest senator in the Senate is not true. There are people here dumber than I am." That was on the record. I heard the tape. I couldn't believe it.
He was actually right.
That was Bill Scott.
Yeah.
Sure he was. Well, this is Dave McConnell. We're having a great time, David. I guess I was never a worker in the Hill, but I lived close to it. And because of my association in the broadcast business, I got real close to it. So I'm going to come back and ask you some more names.
Sure.
See what you think. This is Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
Hi, I'm Charles Mann. For athletes like me, playing every down in a pro game is like getting in a car accident. After years of playing football in Washington, my body is broken. I've had countless surgeries and joint replacements. I've been looking for a non-surgical treatment since I ended my career. I heard a radio ad for a seminar about alternative treatment. It's called regenerative medicine, which stimulates your own body to heal and repair itself. No surgery, no more pain. That got my attention. I went to a seminar to learn firsthand all about it. Now you too can benefit and receive this treatment. This is the same procedure that pro athletes use to quickly and effectively recover from injury. If you're looking to eliminate your pain and arthritis, or if you thought surgery was your only option, take the first step like I did. Call 410-787-7250. Register for the next seminar and learn more about this breakthrough procedure. Seating is limited. Register now by calling 410-787-7250 and start living life again.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell you about Tony and Joe's and Nick's Riverside Grill at Washington Harbor in Georgetown. Spectacular new restaurants. We've spent a lot of time rebuilding. You'll love it. It's really fantastic. For any information, you can go online to tonyandjoes.com. It'll be a wonderful experience for the whole family. Call 202-944-4545 to make reservations. Everything is fabulous. You got to come down and have some wonderful food.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
This is Andy Ockershausen in Our Town. I'm with Dave McConnell. And Dave's got so many great stories from the Hill, which I appreciate because growing up near Lincoln Park, which was not the Hill, but being involved with the broadcast business, I know so much, and maybe some of it's wrong, but Dave McConnell is such a big, important part of our town.
Well, I appreciate your saying that.
Well, it's
I really
true,
do.
David. You have information, and that's why I said it's tough for you to do it, but you ought to write this into a book, leave it for future generation, what you want going through on the Hill.
Well, if I get enough time someday, I probably will.
It's been a great 50 years, hasn't it?
It has indeed.
And all the characters, you ever stay in touch with any of them? But most of them go home.
I see Jim Moran occasionally, Congressman Wolf, the local guys. I pump into them who have retired. Other people who retired, they are either they're off the Hill lobbying or they go back home. And so I don't see them.
Frank Wolf, good man.
Wolf, wonderful person, yeah. You might not have agreed with him personality, his politics, but he was a great guy.
Jim Moran, the boxer.
That's right.
We had a charity event, and we petitioned Moran. He did it to have a one-round boxing match with Marion Barry. And we put robes on him and gave him big gloves. It was so funny.
I couldn't believe that.
And they played it as a joke, you know. Well, you've had some characters down on the Hill like Marion.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. He would. It was an event when he came to the Hill, especially when all of the scandals started surrounding him. And I remember, and it's probably in some podcast, in some videotape somewhere, there is a gaggle of reporters, and I'm one of them with their microphones, following him as he walks down a hallway to go to a committee hearing, asking him about his latest scandal, and he loved it. He's just putting us off, giving us answers. But there's this like amoeba-like thing going down a hallway with all these reporters and equipment and everything walking down there, and he's walking along with us.
And then he probably loved it.
He did.
Man knew how to play the press, I'll tell you that, and how to play the writers and the broadcasters. But the people on the Hill are such an important part of our town, and now they have what they dug up underneath the ground. I mean, growing up in Northeast, we used to use the Capitol steps and all that stuff for sports or whatever it was.
Right.
They never got run off, and we used we didn't do it. They were mostly little dark kids. Used the fountain in front of Union Station as a pool. They were, as soon as the hot weather came, they were in that pool.
I knew that.
And had a great time on the Hill.
Yeah.
Now you get up there, they got guns.
Well, my father-in-law, who grew up in Washington, Norman Jack, who grew up in Southeast and Southwest, he would get a skateboard, or the equivalent of a skateboard back in the 20s, and he would go up and down the back steps. You can't do that now. When I first came there, I would park off the Hill. I didn't have my parking place yet. And I walk up to the Hill, and there was a door in the Rayburn building and a desk where a police officer should have been, and he never was. I'd walk right by that, get right on the subway in the Rayburn building, go into the Capitol, and no one. Well, they did, even in those days, they had metal detectors to check your baggage and check your person, but nothing like now. I mean, now it's you drive into the Hill and your car is checked and you're checked. You have to show your pass. You get out of your car. My parking lot is in Rayburn. Parking spot is in Rayburn. I get out of Rayburn and I get on the elevator. I get on part of the escalator, and that takes me over to the subway, the Capitol subway. That takes me over to the actual Capitol itself. Then I have to get on an escalator, catch an elevator, and then to get to the WTOP booth.
And they probably are checking your credentials almost all the way.
Oh, everywhere, yeah. And I've said, well, I was checked back here. Well, that's okay. We can't do. After 9/11, everything changed.
Oh, it didn't. That's so true. And the shooting of those two guys, too.
I covered that, yeah. Officer Chestnut.
Yeah.
I can't remember I'm sorry, God bless him. I can't remember the other man's name, but there were two fine Capitol Hill officers.
But I knew about it through my work involved with Heroes, because their Capitol Police are part of the protection that Heroes gives, and there have been a lot of fatalities with some of those kids. Even if they're out of town and they're on presidential assignment, if the Secret Service, wherever it is, heroes looks out for their families. So
when Senator Leahy had ricin, not ricin, but when he had the attack,
sent him in the mail.
The smallpox, it causes smallpox. Right. When he went through that attack in his office, he then had special operations in plainclothes officers from the not the Metropolitan Police Force, but from Capitol Hill. They would go with him wherever he went, including Holy Trinity Catholic Church, which is where I attend Mass on Sundays. And Patrick Leahy was in there with these two Capitol Hill plainclothes officers for a long time. Yeah.
Well, I had a good relationship with Terry Gaynor. Remember when he was up there? And
I knew him well. Yeah.
Hill. Terrific guy. And the Capitol Police were not as big as they are now. And now they're like armed guards because the threat must be incredible. There's so many nuts.
It is.
And some of them live here. You know some of the nuts here, too, don't you?
Some of the nuts aren't on Capitol Hill. Some of the nuts are coming to Capitol Hill.
A lot of them are congressmen and senators, but they can't do anything about that, particularly Bill Scott. But, Dave, it's so incredible, your knowledge and what you brought. You must put these things down for future generations because they're not going to believe somebody could walk in the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
I used to walk in, never thought anything of it. You know, I'd go look at all the paintings and the statues. Nobody ever stopped us. We were kids. And I've been to the Senate for their bean soup. Just walked in. That was years ago.
They still serve bean soup, by the way, in the Senate.
Yeah, we had a relationship with a senator from South Carolina, Strom Thurmond. Strom got to be a friend of ours who was a funny guy. I mean, I remember going to a service. He'd been in the military for something like 90 years.
Mm-hmm.
He was in it as a ROTC kid, stayed in it all his life. Some of the characters.
He was one of the all-time characters. I got to know him. He was very friendly, and he was mentally okay until the very end.
Yeah.
He
was over 100, wasn't he?
I think he was around there, yeah.
With Duke, remember his assistant?
Oh, Duke? Yeah, Duke, yeah.
The Duke actually was the senator.
Well, at that time, the large part of the senator's daily business was directed by Duke. You got to get here, you got to go there, you can't talk here, Strom, you can't do this. And you can't look at the ladies, things like that, even though he did. But it would be incredible to think of a Strom Thurmond on the Hill today.
Couldn't exist.
He couldn't. Right. One, he probably couldn't get elected.
That's right.
And number two, he would his manner of being was.
He was a Southern gentleman in his mind.
He was a Southern gentleman, and he. A lot of the senators were and still are somewhat touchy-feely. If you watch C-SPAN and you watch them on the floor, even today you'll still see them put their arms around each other. Not so much as before, though, because they're thinking about that. And they don't want to be perceived as being too forward. So a lot of that has gone out.
Dramatically, David.
Some people think that the friendliness, some people think that some people are reacting too much. But, we have to think about women have really gotten
the short end of the stick.
They have gotten a raw deal in politics, in the Senate, in the House for a long, long time, and I'm glad to see things are changing.
They've gotten a raw deal in business for a long time.
Yeah, our society is
now
sexist.
These two women run my life. This is not fair. I don't mind one, but two of them do it. But it's great. Augustine's got a problem. His wife runs him, too.
You were pardon me for interrupting. You were mentioning earlier about how we had to go around and cover stories. When I first got to the Hill, you had to go to a Senate hearing or House hearing. You'd plug into what we called a malt box. You'd plug your recorder and you'd hope you didn't trip over everybody else's cord, and you'd sit down at the table, and then you figured, well, I got somewhere else to go. I better stop it. I'll take this out. I hope I got enough tape. And then you go back to the booth and file the tape back laboriously. Now, every hearing room in the House and in the Senate is connected to your booth, wherever booth you are in the Hill, and you just push a button and you record from the Hill. You still got a lot of choices to make, and the problem with that is you stay in your booth too much and you don't get to talk to the senators and see them.
You don't see anybody,
although
right?
you do find time. And if you've noticed lately, a lot of times you'll see the senator and there's a brick wall behind him or a hallway or an office. We are now permitted to go into the buildings and go into the hallways of the Capitol. We never had that before. It was strictly...
Yeah, they look unpainted, some of those hallways.
I know, they should fix the hallways. But we were limited to right outside the Senate chamber, right outside the House chamber, which we still are able to cover. But now we're able to move around. Now that's a work in progress. I hope it
Who
continues.
relieved that? The speakers or
The Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader and the President of the Senate Majority Leader,
Right.
and the Minority Leader. The leadership does that. Senator Byrd was ambushed once.
Harry?
Senator Robert Bird. Harry, I don't know about Harry. Harry was not too cozy with the press either. I don't think he was he was still there kind of hanging on when I went there, but he left.
Yeah, he was probably getting ready to leave when you got there.
he was.
He was an apple farmer, too. He used to
that's
say
right.
that.
Yeah, that's right. Apple.
What do they call massive resistance or something, Harry Bird?
Well, he was part of the Virginia contingent, the Southern resistance strategy. He was part of that.
That's the way it was.
But the situation on the Hill where covering stories is that Senator Byrd was shotgunned or ambushed by Sam Donaldson of ABC. He was leaving the Senate floor, and he was trying to get out of the building, and I think he'd just gotten outside, and there was Sam with his crew, and he put his microphone in his face and asked him a very tough question. It was a legitimate question, but Byrd wasn't ready for it, and Senator Byrd had these attitudes about the Senate that it must be treated.
Oh, yeah.
It was a special place.
He's a traditionalist.
And it wasn't a circus. And whenever some big story would come, like the Clinton impeachment, he decided the Senate would not be the circus that the House was with its hearings and everything. It would be regular order. It would be dignified. And he hated anybody coming down the hall, and he got the rules fixed, or he made sure the rules stayed, that we could not get in the Capitol, could get near a senator, except at certain places, and talk to them. That's all changed now. The media explosion is probably
Sam Donaldson rule, huh?
The Sam Donaldson rule, yeah.
Sam was so obnoxious with his treatment of both parties. He was not in favor of any of them.
No, he was an aggressive but very good reporter.
Well, we know Sam quite well. He did some work for WML one time, but I didn't think he was any good. I said, Sam, you're terrible on television. But that was personal. But
I would just say this. Sam was my mentor when I first came to WTOP. Sat me down.
Sam was over here, right?
Yeah,
WTOP TV.
TV. We were TV and radio when I first started.
Oh,
We all did both.
In the new building too, right?
Broadcast. It was called Broadcast House.
Yeah, broadcast. Broadcast.
That's right.
Broadcast.
But he had an hour show on Sunday, and he would find a way for the new guys that came in to get a spot, and it was very good.
It was a good. We like Sam very much. I see him occasionally. There used to be a restaurant here called Duke Zebra's. Gone.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no more hangout for that. It used to be for journalists and people from all the broadcast companies in the Hill. But everything's changed, I think, for the better.
It's for the better.
But WTOP has done so well, David, because of you and what you've done here and your young reporters and guys like Neil. He's such a youth, you know that. Youth is served.
Neil is one of our great reporters.
Oh, absolutely.
He covers everything.
I listen to him.
And he's a whiz.
That
He's a
voice
whiz
got
technically.
me. He got the same voice, remember Ken Beatrice. Everybody.
Well, he has a good voice.
Hated the voice, but they knew who it was.
One thing before we quit, I want to say now, and it's in line with everything we've been saying, how things change, how things grow, and there's been an explosion of news on Capitol Hill. And I'm happy to say that there are two of us now covering the Hill for WTOP, myself and Mitchell Miller. And Mitchell is a great reporter, and it's wonderful working with him, and I'm glad to have him with me. I just wanted to get that in before we finish up.
What is it? Was it Mitch Miller, the guy that had the TV show? What was his name?
This is a different Mitchell. It was Mitch Miller.
Mitch Miller, right?
This is Mitchell Miller.
No, Mitchell Miller.
He
doesn't have a band.
He gets the question all the time, and ad nauseum. Are you any relation to Mitchell Miller? No, he's not. He's from Michigan.
He had his own TV show. It was an hour or something, and they just sang. You know, he'd have the
sing along with Mitch. Yeah.
Sing along with Mitch, but no singing. But to sing along with Dave. David, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You've been a bulwark of this radio station, and I know that, and the people know it. Those of us in the business appreciate what you've done and what you're continuing to do. And I hope you keep out of it till they drag you out of there.
They probably will, and I probably will.
No, they won't. You got too many friends from DeMatha. They're afraid of you.
Okay.
But you've got a wonderful family, and you've had a wonderful life in our town. And I hope you keep doing it for years. And everybody loves Dave McConnell. Well, I can tell you that from personal experience.
Well, it's very kind of you and nice of you to say that.
We all love McGarry, too.
Yes, rest in peace. Sure.
And I kid Hillary, she ran him out of a job, but that happens in our business, right? If somebody's better than you, you're out.
Well, I think Mac retired, did he? And then Hillary took over. Yeah,
he was sick. Yeah. But thank you so much for our town.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you.
You're a great member of our town, David.
Well, thank you.
And Megan has been a wonderful,
my daughter, Megan,
friend of my wife, and we love Megan.
Great.
Hakala.
That's right.
This is Andy Ockershausen. This is Our Town, and we've had a wonderful conversation with Dave McConnell.
You've been listening to Our Town Season 4, presented by Geico, our hometown favorite, with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. Drop us a line with your comments or suggestions. See us on Facebook or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to Ken Hunter, our technical director, and WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. And thanks to Geico. 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance.